Okay, we can get started, I think. Moadim l'simcha. Welcome, everybody. 80 degrees in New York. Okay, yeah. That's like here. Sunny, no rain. I don't remember like that. All the meals with the 3 day yontif. So nice. No, nothing. And considering how late Sukkot is this year, it's pretty amazing. All right. But anyways, welcome. Thank you for coming. I know it's a busy day for everybody, so I appreciate it. But we like to have Torah, as much as we can 7 days a week almost. Can't quite do that on Zoom, but we can close to do that. And listen, I think this year people will see. I think should be a much different Shmini Atzeret than Simchas Torah. We should have true Simcha. We should have, of course, the Sukkah, a peace to be spread upon us. Okay, we'll talk about, I think, just a few different things. So one thing this morning, the Hoshanas. So Hoshanas are really quite beautiful. We say them rather quickly. I find it amazing and kind of perhaps disappointing that the Koran Siddur does not translate the Kinot. And it's not only, I mean, the Kinot are a little bit, I'd say a lot easier to understand than some of the Piyutim, the stuff on the week before Slichas and some of the Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, which are many of them are more difficult to understand, the Kinot especially. But still, they're not simple to understand, and they have all these allusions. And I can't say that I understood every single word this morning, and they say it relatively quickly. People, are in a hurry. But I just want to I know one thing struck me. Of course, Hoshanas is really a prayer, right? It's part of, we spoke last week on the contradictions on Sukkot. So Sukkot is a time of joy and happiness. It's Zman Simchatenu and excessive joy more than any other holiday. And yet it's also more of a fragile time. We go into the Sukkah, to the elements, we're unprotected, the vulnerability of man, which we all know. So Sukkot is this sort of, we discussed last week, this contradictory nature. Hoshanas is really praying. We're God, you should save us. Hoshana, save us. We're in trouble, and and especially it's praying for water. The Hoshanas, especially this morning, B'chag Nidonim El Hamayim. Sukkot is the time we're judged for water, and therefore this is the last day. Tomorrow is not really it's not really in this aspect Sukkot anymore. We say the tefillah for Geshem. That's a debate in the Mishnah. When should we begin to say Mashiv Haruch or Morid Geshem? So one opinion, it's Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. They argue on a lot of issues. When the world was created, all kinds of things they argue about. Why? The one says we say it on Sukkot. Sukkot, the beginning of Sukkot is the rainy time. That's when we should say it. But no, we don't want to say it on Sukkot. That's because we don't want it to rain. And then forget who, I think Rabbi Lezer said, yeah, but we're not praying for rain. Mashiv Aruch and Morid HaGeshem is not a prayer for rain. It's we're acknowledging that God gives the rain. So he says, okay, then why not say it all year? So you could say Einachinami. Maybe we should say it all year. But I would assume he would answer, no, it's true. It's an acknowledgement. We say it around the time of rain. We're not going to pray for rain. We're going to just mention it. But of course, as we know, our custom is we don't begin saying Mashiv Baruch till the 8th day. And then the prayer for the rain, the Tefillah Geshem, we'll say tomorrow. Shmini Atzeret, because the Gemara says it's a curse when it rains on Sukkot, because that God says go outside, and then and then he tells you go back inside because it's raining. It's like as a servant brings a cup of water to his master, and the master throws it in his face. That's the analogy that the Talmud gives. So I think Baruch Hashem, hopefully this year will be a good sign. It's the most amazing weather, and maybe that's a sign that this year should be a much better year. Anyway, so that's a lot of the prayers for rain. I just want to point out one thing. I don't know why it struck me, because we mentioned on Rosh Hashanah that Rosh Hashanah has a little bit of a universalistic aspect to it, right? It's the God of creation, the God of nature. When Sukkot is also has a universal application. We bring the 70 bulls for the 70 nations of the world. It's on peace. That's the difference between the holiday of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret. Sukkot, we're focused outwardly on the world. Shmini Atzeret is the special relationship between God and the Jewish people. That's why the Medrash says we bring one bull. In other words, all the other Yom Tovim, we bring actually two bulls. Pesach, Shavuot, Rosh Chodesh, we bring two. Shmini Atzeret, we bring one, like a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, mind you, but you bring one bull. The special, unique relationship between God and the Jewish people after Sukkot, which focuses on the much more of a universal plane. So he said on the same thing, Rosh Hashanah, obviously nature, creation, that's a universal idea. So we begin the Zichronot with, Noach. and Rosh Hashanah. If you remember, that's how we begin. We don't begin with Avram. The Torah reading is from Avram, but the actual the davening we begin by Noach. So I just noticed, I don't know why, just in one of the slichos, one of the Hoshanas towards the end. So it says, Leman Tamim B'Doratav, for the sake who is pure, for the sake of the one who was pure in his generation. That, of course, is Noach. Each Tzaddik Tamim Haya B'Doratav. Obviously, this piyut is taking the view in Rashi that I think it's obvious that Noach was, I don't know, as great as Abraham, maybe in certain ways even greater than Abraham, right? Noah, what does it mean in his generations? As only compared to his generation, he wasn't he was a good guy, but, really compared to Abraham was a nobody, but just in his generation, there was nobody else. Or they say even in his generation. Can you imagine what it would be like in the time of Abraham? Well, that's a fascinating Rashi, but obviously this piyut is understanding Noach in a much more positive light. The man tamim b'dorotav, he was pure in his generation. Hanimlat v'rov sikotav, he was saved because of his great righteousness. Noach each tzaddik. So you have here tzaddik tamim. Mutzal mishetef v'vo mabul maim. He was saved from the floods when the mabul came, when the flood came, the flowing of the water when the mabul came. So too, God should save us. So I just find that interesting. Obviously, if we talk about rain and Sukkot and water, obviously Noach is the first person that we have to talk about in a sense. So I don't know. I just found that interesting. And then the next one is Leman Shalem B'chol Masim, the one who is complete. You notice it's a backwards alphabetical acrostic. I have the RCA Siddur, page 902. I'm sorry, I didn't. Maybe I should have looked at it inside. You'll have to take my word for it. But it says Leman Shalem, which the man Tamim is tough. Leman Shalem. The next one is Leman Rach. That's Yitzchak, right? Zak Ayeh Salallah, where's the sheep for it to be slaughtered? But after Noach is Avram Shalem B'chol Masim, he was complete in all his activities. Haminusa Ba'asara Nisim. It's so beautiful, the Hebrew, the rhyming. He was tested 10 times. Kashar Malachim, Gam Yukach Nama Atmayim, he should take a little bit of water. Obviously, the reference, all of these people are referencing water, because that's what Avram did to the three angels, whatever came to him, offered them water. And then we go back, then we have Yitzchak, and they found, what does it say here? They found water. Where's the water by Yitzchak? So I don't even, where is the water for Yitzchak? Is that true? I don't know. Does it say in the Torah, water by the Akedah? I don't know, but that's what it says here in the Piyut. And then the Kuf Kidem, and we just go through Tzadek Hayot Lecha Kohen. We talk about Aaron, Moshe, etc. And obviously, Moshe is connected to water, and so Aaron is connected to peace and Sukkot. And through all that, God should, answer us, and in the merit of all our predecessors. And it's a long piyut. I mean, it's obviously it has the entire Aleph Beit, so it's going to be 22 stanzas. And then it actually has at the end, it goes through all 22 letters of the alphabet. Okay, that was just one of the
Rabbi
piyut.
Kelman?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe with Yitzchak, this is a medrash, but on the way to the Akedah, the Satan turned himself into a river.
Yeah. That's a metric to stop Abram. That's why they say we say
Yeah.
actually tashlich. I'm just looking it up very quickly. Book of my chumash va'era here, and
I think also with Yitzhak you have reference to Mayim with the wells.
yes, of course you do. No, yes, thank you. No, I'm talking about the way the piyut presents it. It's by the at the Akedah. Just let me see. Luckily, the RCA Siddur, which nobody uses because they missed the boat. It was too late. Like nobody uses this Siddur. No, but it's so they did translate the Hoshanas, and actually, if you look at the earlier Hoshanas for Sukkot, they did an alphabetical acrostic in English. It's really pretty amazing. It's not a translation. You cannot translate. Leman Amitach, Leman Britach, Leman Golah. They can't really translate, and they have a little note at the bottom. What does it say here? It says here, this translation is based on Nina Salomon and uses a free-form poetic rhyming scheme rather than a literal translation. So it says, for the sake of your approachability, your beauty, your covenant, your dominion, your eternity, your faithfulness. I think it's very, very beautiful. It's doing the same idea of the Hebrew, but it's obviously not a real translation because, but anyway, but it's they get too close. So here, what does it say? Back here, so here they do translate it. For the loved son who asked in his age of sorry, where is the lamb for offering made by fire? Oh, they also did it in English. Cool. And rhyming. For him who heard the tidings, here is water, save her that wandereth in exile dire. Yeah, actually, they rhymed it in English too. Beautiful. Here again, this translation is based on that of Nina Salman, free-form poetic rhyming scheme. That's amazing. There's 22 alphabetical across. It's worth it to get the RCA sitter just for the Hoshanas to see how beautifully they do it. But it could be so the water is talking about other times. I don't know. I have to look at more. I just this morning when I said this, it kind of struck me. So I said, okay, I'll start to share with that. Yeah, when he was in exile, he had water. But Yitzchak wasn't in exile, it was Yishmael. I mean, Yishmael was in exile. They threw him out and then they had a little bit of water. I don't know. Anyways, okay, that's just a little bit of the piyut on Hoshana Rabbah. You can remember for next year. Okay. Let's see. So I don't think I mentioned this last week at all. Sort of, we have two holidays, basically. I mean, if right, somebody asked me yesterday, why is the last day of Sukkot not a yontif? Like the last day of Pesach is a yontif, because Sukkot has an extra day of Chol Hamoed. It's a day longer. Pesach in Chutz La'aretz, Pesach is 8 days. Sukkot is, well, 7 or 9 days, but altogether it's 9 days. It's an extra day. That seventh day, today we'll get to Hoshana Rabbah, is not a yontif. So I don't know. To me, the simple answer was, well, because we have Shmini Atzeret on the next day, so you don't need a yontif on the last day. In other words, but be that as it may, I don't know exactly. That to me seems a simple answer. And it says in Torah, the first day and the 8th day. On Shavuot, so the rabbis basically associate Shavuot with, we all know that, and the Torah tells us that. We count from Pesach to Shavuot. The Torah links Shavuot. Shavuot does not have an independent date in the Torah. It doesn't say on the 3rd month, on the 6th day, and it just says 50 days you count, and the 50th day is Shavuot. And it's clear that Shavuot is part of Pesach. In the Torah, it's for agricultural reasons. It's nothing to do with the Exodus and Matan Torah. That's a Sefer Chinuch, is the one who developed. I'm not saying he's the first, but he's the one most famously in the Middle Ages. We're counting from physical freedom to spiritual freedom. That's very nice, but that's nowhere to be found in the Torah. But the Torah does link them agriculturally, and what, of course, Shavuos in rabbinical literature is known as Atzeret. And obviously, it's like the Shmini Atzeret. Shavuot is the 8th day, so to speak, of Pesach. It's 7 weeks later. You can't do 7 weeks later at this time of year because it'll be in the middle of the winter. We can't have any holidays in the winter because all our holidays relate to agriculture except for Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is about light. And that's why you want to have a festival of light in the darkness of the winter. But so in many ways, we basically have two holidays, two major holidays. You have Pesach and Sukkot, 6 months apart, the 15th of the first month, the 15th of the 7th month. And just each one has a concluding festival. At Atzeret, Shavuot is the conclusion of the Omer to the Shtei Halechem, let's say on agriculturally, the barley harvest to the wheat harvest. And on Sukkot, it's the way the rabbis say, because we don't know why we have Shmini Atzeret. There's nothing happened. So it's just, we're alluding to, it's just God wants an extra day, a holiday for no reason. That's the best type. You give your wife a present, not on her birthday, just to be nice. So that's more her birthday. What do you expect? But so Shmini Atzeret, as the Medrash says, Kasheh alai preidatchem. It's difficult for you to leave. Let's come together. But Pesach and Sukkot have a lot of comparisons to each other. The Gemara actually says the 15th of the month, we compare a lot of the laws of Pesach and Shavuot. But the fundamental difference, I think, ideologically, between Pesach and Sukkot is Pesach celebrates the past and Sukkot looks forward to the future. And that's probably why Sukkot is a more important holiday. In other words, Chag, the holiday, Sukkot seems to be the primary holiday. Most of us think of Pesach because that's the founding of our nation. But the sacrifices are doubled. We've mentioned that in the past, and it's Zman Simchatenu. Simcha said 3 times. There's more activity going on in the Beit Hamikdash. Sukkot and it's the culminating holiday. It's part of Shalosh Regalim and part of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So and it's Lemani Yedu Dorotechem, right? In order that your future generation shall know that God made us sit in the sukkah. I know if I'm going to have a chance to actually finish it, but I'm hopefully writing my article on for my Dvar Torah. It's very unclear. Lemani Yedu Dorotechem. You have to sit in the sukkah so your future generations will know that God took us out in Egypt with a sukkah, and therefore what? Like, why does that create a holiday for 7 days? I mean, a sukkah is not like fit for human habitation. It's for cattle. That's what we mentioned last week. Yaakov builds a sukkah for his cattle. In other words, why is that a reason to sit in the sukkah for 7 days? Because God took us out in sukkahs, and then of course, like, why at this time of year? But Sukkot seems to be a holiday, L'man yedu dorotechem, Sukkot for the future, and that's why I always like to point out that that the notion of chinuch, of education, is the discussions of education are found in the in Masechet Sukkah. And we've mentioned many times, I think, over the years, that the stories of the destruction of the temple are in Gittin, in the divorce, because the exile, destruction of the temple was like the divorce between God and the Jewish people. And the mitzvot the mitzvah to live in Israel is in Ktuvot sort of representing the love of a husband to a wife, and therefore the reaffirmation of the relationship between God and the Jewish people. The story of the foxes, coming out of the temple, and all the sages are crying, and Rabbi Akiva is laughing, is in Masechet Makot, because Makot means you get punished now, but you are absolved from the punishment of Kar. You have to suffer a little bit now with lashes, but that actually serves as an atonement. That's really what Makot are meant, lashes, which we foresee, you can't talk like this in the modern world, but whatever. In the Torah, get 39 lashes in theory for many, 207 sins of the Torah, 207 negative sins you get lashes for. And if it's a death penalty, you don't get lashes. If whatever, has to have an action to it. So if you keep chametz in your house over Pesach, you don't get lashes. You didn't do anything. But if you eat a cheeseburger, in theory, and there's warning and 2 witnesses, didn't happen so often, you got lashes. And then if you, let's say you violated Shabbat or something, you did a very serious sin, you would often get lashes, karet, you'd get lashes, but you wouldn't get karet anymore. That would exempt you from karet. That was the whole impetus to recreate a Sanhedrin in the Middle Ages after the Spanish expulsion, because many Jews had pretended to be Christians, and they wanted to get lashes. That's what they wanted. But you only get lashes if you have a Sanhedrin. So they recreate. That's what the historians explain. So they wanted to recreate a Sanhedrin, so that would be absolved of any future punishment they might get. That's how I understand it. But be that as it may, that story with Rabbi Akiva laughing, what's it doing in Makot? It's in Makot because Rabbi Akiva was laughing. Yeah, we're suffering now, but the future will be that much greater. I think that's a very resonant message for us. And today, in other words, the Jewish people were suffering. I mean, it was worse, and believe me, it was a lot worse then than now. I mean, the exile and destruction of the temple, whatever, it's that. Thank God, this is like the more Jews were killed, worse since the Holocaust. I mean, that's a terrible thing, but it means in all the intervening years, we didn't have massacres of the Jewish people. That's a good thing. But whatever. So that's in Masechet Makot. Rabbi Akiva can laugh because yes, it's bad now, but the future will be great. So always the non-legal portions of the Masechet reflect the legal theme, of the Talmudic Masechet, and that's why we mix in the legal and the non-legal go together, are always mixed in. So Sukkot has all the mitzvot of chinuch, all the mitzvot of education. So the Masechet begins on page 2 on Daf Beit Amud Beit, the Talmud has a story of Helene Hamalka. We're not going to go through the whole story. Helene Hamalka was built a sukkah. The Talmud's trying to prove how tall a sukkah can be, and it talks about how she, her 7 sons would sit with her in the sukkah. So it must be she built a proper sukkah, because even though the kids are below bar mitzvah, I mean, or someone says it's not possible if you have 7 boys that nobody is obligated in the mitzvah to be trained. We start training children in mitzvah when they're first capable of doing mitzvah. And from here, the Rishonim point out, the authorities point out, we mentioned also, and Gemara later on picks up on this, we don't start training kids until they can fully do a mitzvah. For example, when do you start fasting on Yom Kippur? When are you supposed to start fasting on Yom Kippur? When you're how old? Anybody? Yeah, I know you have to start at 12 or 13, but when do you train? I assume most of us are kids, when they're 7, kids want to fast already, like be big. When they're 17, they don't want to fast so much anymore. But when they're 7, oh, let's fast. And, and they argue with their parents because I'm fasting till 2:00. And, the parents said, no, you have to eat breakfast. You can fast. And, didn't you all have all these things with your kids? Right. So when is the mitzvah of chinuch to fast begin? So the truth of the matter is the Mishnah says 1 year before, maybe 2 years before, when the kid's 11 or 12. Why? Because there is no mitzvah of chinuch if the kid's going to fast till 4:00 in the afternoon. I think I mentioned this last week, right? The kid's going to fast till 4:00 in the afternoon. There's no mitzvah of chinuch. That's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to fast all day. So the Mishnah only lists chinuch when a kid is old enough to possibly fast all day. So that's they learn from Helene and Malka, and then the end of but this idea is derived that the Gemara can prove how tall a sukkah can be, even though they're only kids, or 8, 9, 10, sitting in the sukkah, because 8, 9, 10, you know what the sukkah is. A kid can sit in the sukkah, and you cannot build, who cares? The sukkah is almost kosher. Or you give the kid an etrog without a pittim. You can't give the kid who's 7 or 8 an etrog without a pittim. Who cares? He's not obligated. Let him hold it. No, because he's going to grow up. And you remember, when I was younger, I didn't have a pittim, and he's not going to be interested in the technical halakhic details that on the first day an etrog without a pittim is no good. On the second day it is good. Leave me alone. My parents gave me an etrog without a pittim. If it was good enough for my parents, it's good enough for me, and leave me alone. So the Mishnah says, no, better he doesn't take an etrog than he take an etrog without a pittim. We don't do this so well. Because it has to be properly trained. Anyways, I want to add, I want to add one idea that, so Sukkot is about the future. And Pesach is about the past. Chinuch, our kids, training our kids that we should know. So Sukkah, it's peace. That's what Sukkah, the theme of Sukkah is peace. We look forward to a better future. That's why we can celebrate. Yes, there is suffering. Rabbi Akiva is laughing, but it will be great. Things will be great. Things are, the Jewish people, despite everything, are in one of the best places they've been in 2,000 years, where we've got an army, we've got strong, Jewish population. There's Torah is growing like never before. Jews are relatively safe, despite, yes, I know the terrible anti-Semitism everywhere. Believe me, it's much better than it was. Somebody, I don't know if I mentioned this. It was really kind of sad. I called somebody before Rosh Hashanah to wish them a nice year. Someone in Toronto, and they said to me, their mother's 97 years old in a nursing home. So the mother said to the daughter, what's everybody going crazy? This is how we always live. We always live like this. What's the big deal? This is nothing. I grew up in Europe. It was much worse. It's such a wow, we grew up in the greatest time in Jewish history. We're from the generation where it was the best of everything. And now we're going whatever. But we always look forward to a better future. So that's why Sukkot, so I want to give, I know it's not exactly related, but I just want to point out, let me share one piece of Gemara, and then back to Hoshana Rabbah. I just find this an interesting story. Just give me 1 second. The Gemara talks about Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. So Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, that's Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. This is the famous one who was excommunicated in this, let's do with the oven. As I'm imagine many of you know, or that Rabbi Eliezer grew up not totally in ignoramus. His father was very wealthy. He worked in the family business on the farm. He knew nothing. At the age of 22, he wanted to go learn, and he runs away to learn with Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. He doesn't know Aleph Bet. He knows mamish, absolutely nothing. And then and the brothers say the father should cut him off of the inheritance because what's he wasting his time studying Torah? And the father goes to visit him, and he's blown away. And he says, "No, my son should get everything." And he said, "No, I don't want everything." Anyway, and then he becomes known as Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, the great Rabbi Eliezer. So the Gemara says he was sitting in the sukkah. Rabbi Eliezer Shavah beGalil Elyon b'Sukkato shel Yochanan, Rabbi Eli. Anyways, they asked him a question, and he gave a non sequitur. He gave some answer. He says, "What is halakha? Can I spread a sheet over the roof? It's raining. I want to put a sheet or whatever roof." So he said, "There is no tribe from Israel from which a judge did not emerge." What in the world does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Totally threw him off topic. And the same thing happened. Again, they asked him a question. He gave some crazy answer that had nothing to do with anything. So the Gemara then makes a comment. Rabbi Eliezer he was very, very dedicated to his past. He only said things that he heard from his teacher. And if his teacher didn't tell him, if he didn't learn it, he didn't do his own initiative. He didn't take, he just did whatever he heard from his Rebbe. Lo amar davar shelo shama mipi Rabbi olam. He never ever said something. He just repeated over what his teachers taught him. And therefore, his teachers didn't discuss this question, so he refused to answer the question. It's like wild Gemara. The problem is that this, I didn't quote the other source, but this is contradicted by a piece, I believe, in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, the chapters of a Rabbi Eliezer. It says that when Rabbi Eliezer spoke, it was like words had not been heard like this from the time of Har Sinai. It was so, the sun would shine. It was amazing. No one had ever heard his insights in his new novel were so unbelievable. It was like a new Torah was being given from Har Sinai because of his brilliant new things. So the two sources contradict each other. Those who were at Rabbi Harbader's shir last night, so the two sources contradict each other. Very nice. Okay, good. So whatever it could be, two sources contradict each other. So Rav Kook has a beautiful explanation. I think I heard it. I heard Rav Schachter telling me this, and he quoted this in shir once, and I believe he quoted this in the name of Rav Kook, which makes a lot of sense because Rav Kook is the one who says, "Hayashan tit chadesh," what is old shall become new. V'hachadash tit kadesh. It doesn't work in English. It only works in Hebrew. Hayashan tit chadesh. The old will be renewed and the new will be sanctified. Very nice in English, but it's not as good. So he says, so it makes sense. So what did Rav Kook say? Rav Kook said, it's just it's so true. It's like you can say everything your teacher taught you and it can be totally different. In other words, two people can learn something. When your teacher teaches you, to repeat it doesn't mean that you repeat the same word. It means you take the idea and repeat it. So somebody can say something that's original, but it's not original. Take Rav Soloveitchik. So Rav Soloveitchik was such a machadesh, had such brilliant new insights in everything. Rabbi Haber spoke last night. His idea of Adam 1, Adam 2 was revolutionary. And yet Rabbi Soloveitchik would tell you he just follows his Masorah. Rav Soloveitchik, more than anybody else, spoke about the importance of a tradition. He refused to wear tchelet. Tchelet was discovered, when we don't have a tradition to wear tchelet. He was very much like, or Rav Lichtenstein, let's say, this says that if they found Moshe Rabbeinu Sefer Torah, let's say the archaeologists we found the mamish, the real Sefer, the first one given, and it's different. It says you can eat pig. Or it doesn't say you can't eat pig. It says you can eat pig. So Rav Schachter told us in shir, he would eat pig. He didn't use that example. He said, if we find the Sefer Torah, we would, obviously, it's a Torah emet. If we were convinced if we find new manuscripts, so I gave an extreme example, but this comes up now all the time. It's a big question. They find manuscripts and they talk and find out the Rambam didn't say what they thought he said. The Rambam actually said the opposite. We have lots of stuff like that today, very big, and this is a big machloket. Do you change your practice based on some manuscript? The traditional view is you don't. Well, it's probably for all kinds of reasons. Rav Shachter said, of course, Rav Yosef said you should. Cousin, he said you shouldn't. But even they found the original Sefer Torah. So I know Rav Lichtenstein said, we have a Masorah. He got it from, I'm sure, his father-in-law. We have a tradition, and I heard Norman Lamb say this one. There's halakhic truth. Halakhic truth is not always the same as real truth. We have legal truth. Everybody knows that, right? I see O.J. Simpson can get convicted on civil crime, but innocent in the criminal court. I don't understand. It's the same thing. Either he's innocent or either he did it. If he didn't do it, then you can't give him a civil fine that he had to pay. And if he did do it, then you should put him in jail for the rest of his life. I don't understand. It makes no sense. But we all understand that. We understand the American Constitution. And comes to, it's true in Canada too. Tova, is that right? We have a lawyer here. Welcome. So that in criminal law, it's got beyond a reasonable doubt, and that you don't need that bar of evidence. So we know there is legal truth, and so that's a concept. There's halakhic truth. It's nothing wrong with that. The halakha has its own system, and sometimes it doesn't conform 100% reality. Rav Schechter, then when he was much more willing to, we've got the real thing. We have to change it. But so somebody can say something. All I'm saying, it's the idea. It's what Rav Kook was saying. That's exactly what Rav Kook meant. That's why he would say this, Rabbi Lezer. The all will be renewed, and the renewed will be sanctified. It's the same thing. You're putting it in modern colors. You're a great speaker, so you take the same idea. Have two people can speak. One's a lousy speaker, and they both say the same idea. But when Jonathan Sachs says it, has much more impact than some Rosh Yeshiva who can't speak English. And I don't mean to criticize. It's true. It's true. Like, yeah, it's very important to speak. You know the article "Tefillin in a brown paper bag." Right? Everybody know that article "Tefillin in a brown." Does anybody know of the article "Tefillin in a brown paper bag"? Raise your hand. Otherwise, anybody know the article?
No. You shared it with us once.
I did share with you one, but you have to review a little bit. You see, people don't remember. It's especially.
I'd like to hear it.
I'm sorry.
I would like to hear it.
Yes, so it's Emmanuel Feldman. I think he's hopefully he's doing well. He's probably in his 90s or close to 90. Emmanuel Feldman was he went to Atlanta like when it was a desert, and then in 1950s he became rabbi in Atlanta. He was there for 40 years, I don't know, and then he moved to Israel, and he was editor of Tradition for many years. That Norman Lamb founded Tradition today. That's at a revival. What's his name in Israel, doing a great job at editing. I have no idea if I forgot his name. It's very bad. I forget. Okay, that's not good of me. I'll try to look it up. But anyways, Emmanuel Feldman was the editor, I guess, for about 12, 15 years, like in the 90s. I don't remember exactly. So he had a cute thing that the other editors have not done. He got editor's notebook. And at the beginning of every volume, he would write 2-3 pages, just thoughts. So now that the World Series is starting, the Mets, the Yankees and the Dodgers, big, So not quite a Subway Series, not the Mets and the Yankees. What can you do? Not that I've watched 1 second of baseball this year, but okay. You still got to know what's going on. He would write about baseball. He was a baseball fan. He has a great article that when they did this in Israel. They showed a World Series game, but they only showed plays with action. So they didn't show ball one, strike one, foul, the throw to first base. So the game took like a minute and a half because there are only 27 outs and 10 hits, so there's 70 plays. Each place takes 4 seconds, so the whole game is in 400 seconds. I watched it, and it was like, that's not baseball. I'm sorry, yes, you didn't miss one thing of action, but that's not baseball. He would write a lot, so he has one I think probably his most famous article is Tefillin in a brown paper bag, and he says nobody would dare wrap their tefillin in a brown paper bag. But why do so many of our rabbis present Torah like tefillin in a brown paper bag? They can't speak proper English. They don't know. They don't put a thought together with the beginning. whether you have a joke at the beginning. This is very important. And today, he was saying, and he was complaining, they make fun of it. In parts of the Orthodox world, people make fun of these things. I mean, I'll just say now, those are in Toronto, Rabbi Wayne Allen, he speaks now at Army. He's a very traditional conservative rabbi who retired a number of years ago, and he davens now in our Orthodox shul. It's a frum guy, but from the anyways. So every once in a while he speaks. He gives the Dvar Torah in our shul. He speaks so beautifully. He's training. My son-in-law was here. He said he's never heard a speech that good in his life. He spoke on Shabbos Chol Hamoed. The idea, put together a thought, how you put it together, how you organize it, and that inspires you. So there's something very, very important that people denigrate. Just learn Torah, learn another block tomorrow. Why do you have to waste your time to learn homiletics? I had to take a course in homiletics. You hear Rabbi Lookstein taught the course in homiletics. So you have to have I was at a wedding once. Rabbi Lookstein did the wedding. One time I heard Rabbi Lookstein, Haskell Lookstein, now in his 90s. It should be well. So he did a wedding, and the way he introduced the ksuva, and if you've ever heard Rabbi Lookstein speak, he speaks slowly and clearly. He says, we're now going to read the ksuva, and the ksuva was read at your mother's wedding and your grandmother's wedding, and it's been read for the last 2,000 years. And he got this beautiful, wow, like I was so excited to hear about how much money the husband's going to pay the wife if they get a divorce. I mean, right. He also taught us, nobody got that joke. That's what the ksuva is. The ksuva, Rabbi Lookstein taught us, never translate a ksuva. Like the rabbi, when he does a wedding, should explain everything. There are always going to be people there who don't know what's going on, even from people. They don't know why 2 cups of wine, they don't know. Rabbi should always explain what's going on, and translate everything and tell what the Sheva Bracha says, but never do that by ksuva. Just make some nice thing, because if you read the ksuva, half the people will walk out of the room. If we get divorced, I'll give you the shirt off my back, and I promise to have you yes, Yocheved. Okay, we got to get back to Sukkot stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So
It's
just
tired, and I'm sorry, okay. I'm probably doing tefillin in a brown paper bag also. I hope not. Okay. Yes, Yocheved.
Right. So I definitely agree with that as a teacher of literature and English. But I once heard someone whose 2 sons got smicha from Rav Shechter told me he speaks not so dramatically. So she claimed that he told them that the reason he does it deliberately and encourages them to do so, not exactly in a monotone, but not to get overly dramatic, because your people should connect with the Torah that you're speaking and not with your personality.
Okay.
Or charisma.
I hear you, and I'm going to say
true?
something. Yeah, I hear you. His Rebbe, Rav Soloveitchik, did not buy that theory.
I know.
Nobody
That's
spoke
why
more
I found
dramatically
it
than
very
Rav Soloveitchik.
interesting.
Rav Shechter told us, I can picture, I remember sitting, Rav Shechter told us, this isn't necessarily so, says Rav Soloveitchik could convince you of everything. He could convince you it's snowing in July. He was so powerful. And Rav Soloveitchik said, a teacher has to be an actor. And I'm telling you, I teach, and that's a teacher have to be an actor. When I first started teaching, you didn't, no way, man. You got to totally connect to the kids, especially today. And yes, and that's why they'll tell you Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't a good speaker. He stuttered, whatever it was. He was a kvat peh. Why? Because nobody should say we got the Torah, because Moshe wowed them with his oratory. But mind you, Elu hadvarim. Moshe begins, I'm not an ish dvarim. That's his, I don't know how to speak. Elu hadvarim asher diber Moshe. Somehow Moshe became a great speaker. At some point in the Torah, Moshe becomes this great speaker. The Torah doesn't tell us when, but it's all over the place. You see, Moshe is a great speaker. So, but yes, you know what? And there is something that, first of all, Rav Shechter, it's not totally true. I was in his year for 4 years. He has a great sense of humor. He cracks jokes all the time. And I don't know what he's like now in his 80s, but when I was in his year, he wasn't famous. He was in his early 40s, late 30s. I came to Shir, he's probably 39 years old, probably when I started his Shir. And he didn't have a beard. Nobody heard of him. And I was like blown away. This is a person, I never met somebody who knows Kol Torah Kula the way he does. And he would joke around, and he would tell us that the Gemara says Rav always began a shir with a joke. The Gemara says. So the Gemara is aware of that. You got to get people, every good speaker knows you start with a joke, and it puts people in a good mood. They're open. So the Rav says, Rav Shechter said, there's a machloket. It's funny. There's a debate. is that only at the beginning of the shir. But once you start the shir, you can't have jokes. It's got to be serious. Towards Yira, Ema, there's this whole idea it should be fear and awe, like at Mount Sinai, or you can say jokes in the middle. Rav Shechter used to say jokes in the middle of the shir, so he clearly paskined it's okay to say jokes. Maybe he didn't think they were jokes, but the people listening thought they were jokes. So I don't know. Yeah, but I can tell you, I don't mean to. Rav Lichtenstein was one of the great teachers in our world. If he could speak anywhere near like Rav Soloveitchik, he would have had more influence. And there's no doubt the reason Jonathan Sacks has the influence he does, his writing, but absolutely his speaking ability. And it can be used for negative things too. We know great orators and doing negative things. I don't want to mention anything, but Hamevin Yavin, we all understand that. But it's true about everything. Everything can be used for good or for bad. So yes, to present Torah in a beautiful way. What's an etrog, a pre-Eitz Hadar? Actually, this is the best proof. Pre-Eitz Hidur Mitzvah. We don't put our etrog. I just remember there's a lot of people do. A lot of people put their etrog in the box they buy it from. But I have my father's beautiful silver etrog holder that I use. And you want my etrog to be nice. We don't make Kiddush cup on a glass. We make it a nice silver. And everybody's been to a museum, Jewish, the beautiful artistic things. People spent a lot of money. That's what we call Hidur Mitzvah. We enhance the mitzvah when it's aesthetically beautiful. The Beit HaMikdash full of gold. I think it's a very great weakness of our generation that there's somehow this feeling that it's not important, just Rav Shechter's a pretty good speaker. Believe me. I mean, yes, he doesn't have that, whatever. He's not Rav Soloveitchik, okay? But you know what I mean. Okay, enough of that. But my point is, Rabbi Eliezer, that's what the Gemara says. Things he said was amazing. We've never heard. What about the Gemara says he never said something unoriginal? You can do both. And that's exactly what Rav Soloveitchik did. He took Rav Chaim's. Rav Chaim never heard of Kant and you read Halachic Man, Rav Soloveitchik quotes 28 philosophers. I didn't even hear of all of them. I shouldn't say I'm ignorant. What can I tell you? I'm not the philosophical Rav Soloveitchik bar every philosopher, but it's a description of Rav Chaim. Everybody knows that. Halachic Man is a description of his grandfather. His grandfather didn't know who any of these people were, never heard of them, would never read them, would throw them off the table. A different world. When they asked for Soloveitchik, how come your great-grandfather, the Netziv, right? The Rav Chaim Soloveitchik married the Netziv's granddaughter. So it was a great-great-grandfather, I guess, the Netziv. So he said, how come your great-great-grandfather closed the Volozhin yeshiva when the Russian government introduced secular stuff? So it's not really true, but we'll pretend it's true. Read J.J. Shechter's article. That's not what happened, but that's what they say, like in the yeshiva world. He closed because they introduced secular studies. How can you teach in yeshiva university? How can you do this? You claim to be following the path of your grandfather. So Rav Soloveitchik said, times are different. That was his answer. Times are different. Why did we have a state of Israel? The Rav's famous answer. We need it. We need it. Why when Yitzchak, right, the Vilna Gaon didn't need a state of Israel. Without the state of Israel, 5 million more Jews would be assimilated, right? One of the Rabbi, I won't mention his name here, I don't know why, but one of the Rabbi from Har HaTziyun once came to speak in Toronto, and he said that God did a great chesed by creating secular Zionism, is he let millions of Jews be connected to Torah. They didn't have to lose their commitment to Torah. Otherwise, they would have been totally, onto Judaism. In other words, they remain Jews because of secular Zionism. And that's a great thing. And now many of them have their children, grandchildren. There's much more religious percentage in Israel than there once was. So that was a great chesed. So I say the same thing on conservative and Reform Judaism. You won't hear rabbis say the same thing. In Israel, they'll all say it about all the religious Zionists, they all work with the secular Zionists. They're very much. They have no problem. They have no problem partnering with people who eat treifus on Yom Kippur, no problem. But Reforma, they're terrible. No, it's the same thing. The death of the conservative movement, unfortunately, now that's slowly dying, it's terrible, is a great tragedy. And it kept people connected to Judaism. And the Baal Tshuva world is less now because they're less conservative Jews. The war has helped the Baal Tshuva a little bit. There's been more of an awakening. But anyway, so it's not... whatever, we don't understand how these things work, but times are different, but yet, so but it's still the same Torah. I'll tell you one last thing on this. This with not I have I got to like 1/8 of my notes. Like usually I get a little more than 1/8. But Rav Shachter told us I remember it says Vayhi Baretz, and told it by Yitzchak. Vayelech Yitzchak, whatever. Yitzchak wanted to go to Egypt. We all know that. And God said, no, you can't go to Egypt. So the Midrash says, because he's an Ola Tamima, this pure person that went up the Akedah, he can't go. It's not for him. He'll get ruined by Egypt, right? Avram, Yaakov, they were people of the world. Yitzchak was a little naive, if I can use that word. He was not the worldly person. He couldn't see through Esav initially. He couldn't, if he was exposed to Egypt, he would have been lost. He had to stay in Israel in the holiness, whatever. That's so why did he want to go to Egypt? His father went to Egypt. So that's why he's so. I remember Rav Shachter saying this in Shir. And believe me, Rav Shachter's nobody can say Rav Shachter's a Reform rabbi, a liberal, modern Orthodox rabbi. That's not Rav Shachter. We all know that. Then he's not at all, right? He said sometimes to do the same thing as your father is to do the exact opposite. In other words, you take the principle of your father and you apply it. So he followed his father. For his father, it was important to travel, to go to Egypt. For him, it was important to stay for the same reason, just the application of that reason is Avram could only become the founder of the Jewish people if he left his homeland and he went to Israel. And Yitzchak could only maintain the future of Jewish people if he stayed in Israel. So it's the same thing, just how you apply it is very different. I'll give one last example. Please, I'm on computer, so I know people will throw, otherwise you'll throw your etrog at me. I'm sure many people, I don't know how many people know that Rav Shachter says you're not, and people don't follow this. Nobody should get excited. We follow it, although I'm open to changing it now because it's been many years. I'm not as beholden to every psak that Rav Shachter gave us, but I was in a shir and because I was influenced and we got married. This is what we do at a Yom Hazeh. We do not light candles on the second night of Yom Tov. And why don't we light candles on the second? Rav Shachter feels it's a violation of Yom Tov, unless maybe you light in a dark room and move and read there for 10 minutes and then move it. Why do we light candles? So we can have light. That's why we light candles. No, we have electricity. Your chandelier is burning, is on. What in the world do 2 candles or 5 candles, however candles you light, add to the atmosphere? Absolutely nothing. You're not allowed to light fire in Yom Tov for no purpose. So Rav Shachter even holds when you light candles on Friday night, you have to turn off the electricity. Because if you have electricity, I don't need to light candles anymore. That's why the women who give birth in the hospital, they don't have to worry that they missed Hadlaka Neirut. The lights in the hospital room are good enough for Hadlaka Neirut. So Rav Shachter, you should turn it off. You should light on the electricity, on the chandelier, and their candles. That's okay on Friday afternoon, when it's a Friday afternoon, a weekday. But on Yom Tov, you can't do that. So Rav Shachter holds, that's like, oh my, he's changing everything. And I remember saying, no, we're doing exactly what your grandmother did. My grandmother lit candles. Yeah, your grandmother lit candles because she lived in the dark. You live in the light, so you don't light candles. You're doing what your grandmother did. Just in practice, you're doing the exact opposite. So that's really, if you want to say that's what Judaism has to be all about. We sometimes do the exact opposite, but it's the same. That's our Masorah. This is what it means to be a modern Orthodox Jew, to know how to apply the same principles in a modern world where the applications are we're not living in the shtetl anymore. So things have to be different. I guess people who don't buy into this philosophy think differently. But anyways, okay, let's do one more thing on the Hoshana Rabbah. It's getting late, and then maybe a couple minutes on Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah. Our calendar is because of Hoshana. So Hoshana Rabbah is mentioned nowhere. In the Mishnah, I'm not even going to show it to you because we're time constraints. The Mishnah calls Hoshana Rabbah Yom Hashvi Shel Araba. The Arabot, there is no, you look in the Torah, the 7th day of Sukkot is no different from the 6th day or the 5th day or the 4th day. It's Chol HaMoed, nothing different the 7th day. In the Beit HaMikdash, it became that we have a tradition, Halacha L'Moshe Sinai, that we take Arvei Nachal. We take Arvei Nachal. So Arvei is plural. So that's why we have 2 Aravot. Anaf Eitzavot is 3. That's how the Gemara derives. It's like a funny 3 words. Anaf Eitzavot, 3 Adasim. Arvei Nachal, the minimum plural is 2. Pri Hadar is singular. Kapot Marim, written without a vav, singular. one etrog, one lulav, one hadas, 3 hadasim, 2 aravot. Rabbi Akiva says it's one of everything. Have 1 arava, 1 hadas too, but obviously we don't follow that view. But the Talmud has another way. Per Arvei Nachal, there are 2 types of aravot. There's the arvan the lulav, and then there's the aravot that used to put at the Beit HaMikdash, very tall aravot around the altar, and then they used to walk around the altar. That's what we call hakafot. There's a debate: did they do hakafot with the lulav or with the arava? So our shuls, we Jewish people have decided they did with a lulav, but there's an opinion they actually walked around with the arava, not with the lulav. Okay, beseder. So that's it. And the Mishnah says Yom HaShvi shel arava. On the 7th day, they would do it. They would do it even if it's on Shabbos. In other words, the Mishnah says that the lulav is taken 6 or 7 days, and the arava is 6 or 7 days. Unlike the shofar, in the time of the Mishnah, if the first day of Sukkot fell on Shabbat, you took the lulav. Unlike already in the time of the Mishnah, you didn't blow shofar, just in the Beit HaMikdash. But in the time of the Mishnah, you did take the lulav. We don't have time to get into why. You did take the lulav. Later on, we stopped. But we took the lulav only if the first day was on Shabbat. And the arava was only done if the last day was the 7th, this big fancy thing. The aravot were done only on Shabbat, only if Hoshana Rabbah was on Shabbat. But on when the 4th day of Sukkot was on Shabbat, they didn't do the arava, special aravot. The aravot were done 6 days when Hoshana Rabbah was not on Shabbat, and 7 days when Hoshana Rabbah was on Shabbat. So the first day of Sukkot is on, you can't have them both 7 days. The first day is a Shabbat, lulav is 7 days. If the last day is Shabbat, the arava is 7 days. The problem is this arava is not mentioned anywhere. You can know the Chumash backwards and forward. There's no arava. So the Sadducees didn't like this mitzvah. They were against it. The Gemara, all the fascinating things, they would steal them, put them on the rocks, whatever. They didn't like it. They didn't want it done. And we know in the temple there were big fights between the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and the rabbinic tradition and people who didn't follow the rabbinic tradition. Same thing on the water libations. That's for another time. So what happened was so the rabbis, when they instituted our calendar, they made it that Hoshana Rabbah never falls out on Shabbos. It's amazing. We allow the calendar, we allow Rosh Hashanah to fall on Shabbos, and we miss the mitzvah of shofar. That's a biblical mitzvah. Hoshana's is not. The Gemara has a debate whether it's a minhag or from the prophets. It's way less important, like 1,000th of as important as one shofar. It's a minhag, maybe it's a minhag, maybe to do the arava. But because of that, the rabbis were afraid if Hoshana Rabbah fell on Shabbos nowadays, if Hoshana Rabbah on Shabbos, people. So that year we can't take the people look forward the whole year. Kids that bang the rabbis on the floor. Take out so we wouldn't be able to do that on Shabbos. Next year we don't have to do it. Hoshana Rabbah is not so important. It's the same thesis at the beginning, that chinuch. It's very important that you train people properly. So the rabbis were so afraid that if 1 year you missed Hoshanas on Hoshana Rabbah, you didn't bang the ravot, which is some crazy minhag. I don't mean it in a negative way, but really some low important minhag, people wouldn't do it. And that we don't want. Nobody's going to say shofar is not important. Shofar is not important because we didn't blow shofar last year because it fell on Shabbos, but they might say that by Hoshana Rabbah. So our calendar, Lo Adu Rosh, that Rosh, first day of Rosh Hashanah, can't be on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. The only reason it can't be on a Sunday is so Hoshana Rabbah will not be on a Shabbat. I just find that very interesting. Okay. All right, let's just do one thing about Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, which I've explained, in the past. It's obviously Simchat Torah is a post-Talmudic holiday that only makes sense if you're not living in Israel, and it developed for people not living in Israel, because Shmini Atzeret is no reason, as we said at the beginning. Shmini Atzeret is just the love of God and the Jewish people, but we don't. So that's good for one day, but what do you do on the second day? So we don't have time now. That's our Shmi. So we divided it, and we made up a new name. There's no such thing as Simchas Torah. It's a made up name in the Middle Ages. There's the Yontiv Sheni of Shmini Atzeret. That's what it is. And we converted Shmini Atzeret into this very serious day because Geshem, this contradictory nature of Sukkot, the joy of Sukkot and the nervousness of Sukkot. So on the last days, we divided it into two separate days. The nervousness, the Geshem, the Chazan gets in the Kittel, the tune, even Hoshana Rabbah. It was the Rosh Hashanah tune. That's how they did, Psukkah Zimra. We're getting in the mood. It's like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. We're being judged. It's very serious. And then Simchas Torah is the Simchat, the great, the mitzvah of Simchas, Mansikvatena. We go, so it's two like totally separate days, but this is sort of a rabbinic. This is how it developed. This is not nothing like this in the Torah at all. And of course, when Jews came back to Israel, they combined the two. It doesn't really work. But okay, what can you do? They weren't going to get rid of Simchas Torah. That's why they had Kavkajia. But I think people are in Israel. I think maybe Israelis don't feel like this. But I think when you make Aliyah, I think people find it strange that Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah are like on the same day. But it represents the contradicting notion. But I'll just end. How come we're dancing and singing and partying? Hopefully this year too, people have good reason to dance. Dancing and singing, and what are we dancing? Moshe died. We read in the Torah. I just maybe this is I just find this LP Jewish very kind of interesting. Bezod Bracha is the death of Moshe. That's how the Torah ends. And we're dancing the greatest Aliyah, Chatan, Torah, Chatan, Breach. Wow, we're going to make a big deal because the person's going to get to read about the death of Moshe. Wow. And everybody sings and dances. It's like, well, what's going on here? So I just think very, very simply, I think it's because the idea that, you can say Moshe lived to be 120. Okay. So we're happy. When you live to be 120, you don't mourn when somebody dies. Okay. Maybe. But I think the real reason is because we are celebrating that the Torah continues after Moshe. It's like our Torah, what we said before, kind of. It wasn't the oratory of Moshe. It wasn't we don't keep the Torah because Moshe convinced us. And when he died, it happens in a lot of companies. A lot of things happen. The lead person dies, and the organization suffers, and things change. The great leaders create new leaders, and they have nobody else. So we have Yoshua, and that's why they have Torah against the Gemara. The Gemara says we read the Torah from Shlomo Melech, and Tosfot says we're not supposed to read this Torah, but we all read the Torah of Yoshua. It's not what the Gemara says, because the Jewish people said no. The Torah continues. Lo yamush Torah zemipicha. It's really a thing about I think in the context it means the Jewish people. The Torah will be permanent in the Jewish people. So we celebrate the fact that even though Moshe died, the Torah is strong and continues, and that's true in every generation. Dor Lech v'Dor Ba. Yeah, we don't have Rav Soloveitchik anymore, and I don't think our generation's rabbis are as good as a previous generation. And everybody says that. It's probably true though, but maybe it's not always true. Nonetheless, the Torah continues, and that's the simcha of Simchat Torah. So we should continue through good times and less good times. The Jewish people have committed Torah. We're an amazing people. 4,000 years we put up with all kinds of stuff, and that's we can demand from God. We pray to God that it should be a time of peace, of true simcha. Just in 30 seconds review, because I have to go teach a chat now. Basically, we talked a lot on chinuch. Pesach is the past, Sukkot is the future, and we look forward to. It's all about training and chinuch and better future, and that's why even the suffering should lead to something more positive. We spoke about how Torah is, we take the same Torah and apply it in the future. It's renewed. The same Torah, it's the same Torah, it's our Masorah, but you have to learn how to apply it in every generation. That was the greatness of Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol, Rabbi Eliezer the Great, and we should be zocheh to know how to source. So there will be less secular Jews. So those Jews, when will come from in the conservative movement, reform movement, having trouble. So we should be there to teach them the beauty of our tradition, the honesty, the integrity, the midot that we have, because that's much more important than any particular mitzvah. As Rav Soloveitchik said, quoted, nobody's going to be attracted to Judaism because you keep glut kosher. You know, I think it's not important, but if you want to attract non-religious, it's because your honesty, your integrity, your sensitivity, your refinement. We sit in the sukkah to know that there are homeless people around the world, sensitive. So let us be merit bizocha, that we should have a simcha, true simchat Torah. It should be a wonderful year, and I want to wish everybody a Chag Sameach, and those who are observing, I think that's most of us, except for Tova, having a 3-day yontif, and should enjoy. Okay, you get a break, and should be well. Sunday, Rabbi Leiptag will be giving shiur, and please come next Friday. We'll come back to our regular siddur class at 9:15, and everybody well, and Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Chag
Shabbat
Sameach.
Shalom.
Chag
Chag
Sameach.
Sameach.
Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.